Three things that I really prioritize in my diet as a naturopathic doctor are fiber. I really aim to get about 30 grams of fiber per day, ideally from 30 different plants per week. Another thing is making sure that I'm getting adequate protein, about 25 to 30 grams per meal. And then lastly, that I'm getting lots of color and polyphenols in my diet. I've really found that these have made a huge difference in both my and my patient's health. So I thought I'd take you guys along for a week in my kitchen. Starting off on Monday, you guys know that I like to stick to staple meals. It just really cuts down on decision fatigue, and especially first thing in the morning, I don't really want to spend extra time thinking about what I'm going to have for breakfast. So you guys know this has been my go-to breakfast lately. It is just ground beef. Here, I ended up making a big batch of it just to have it for later. So I set some of that aside, and then over the weekend, I had roasted some carrots, delicata squash, and parsnips. You guys can go back to my other videos because I make these in almost every video. I topped it all off with some mashed avocado, and this breakfast alone has about 10 grams of fiber between the veggies and the avocado, and then about 25 grams of protein from the ground beef. It is delicious, and yeah, if I have everything prepped, it comes together super quick and easy. After my breakfast, I did make myself a coffee. This is the cashew milk that I have been loving. It just has cashews and water, and then in the winter, I always do like a little bit of a sweeter coffee, so I just added a little bit of coconut sugar to my coffee. And then moving on to lunch. Lunch is always the meal that I probably struggle with the most. I find that it's just kind of the middle of the day. I don't really want to take a break to eat, but I know that if I skip a meal, I will not feel good later. So this has been one of my go-to lunches lately. It is just some mashed cottage cheese along with some avocado. I put it on some rye sourdough bread, and I also top it off with a little bit of smoked salmon that I get from a fish market by my house. It is so delicious, and I love using sourdough bread, especially this rye version. It's got a bunch of different seeds like flax seeds, sesame seeds, chia seeds, so it's super high in fiber. Plus you have lots of fiber from the avocado, and then in terms of protein, you have lots from the cottage cheese and a little bit from the smoked salmon. I also had a very sad golden kiwi that I had to use up, so I had that on the side just to add a little bit more micronutrients, especially vitamin C and some fiber to this lunch. And then on Monday, I decided to do a little bit of meal prep. Lately, I have been loving doing blended oats. So I do oats, chia, and flax. And then I know this sounds kind of weird, but lately I've been adding a few eggs. I actually find that it really makes the texture nice and light and fluffy. And it also adds a good amount of extra protein and nutrients to the oats. And then of course it is apple season. So apples are super cheap at the grocery store. And I love adding in one or two grated apples. Here I just used one because they were ginormous, but it's a great way to add some natural sweetness and tons more fiber to the oatmeal. And then I also like to try and get in berries at least a few times a week, preferably every day. And in the winter, one of my favorite ways to add these in is by using frozen berries in oatmeal. The oatmeal kind of thaws the berries, and it's a really cost-effective way to get more berries into your diet. So I just set that aside, and I had oatmeal all prepped for the week. And then on Monday, I decided to make a big batch of my turmeric coconut chicken soup. I have been loving this. I will link the original recipe that I used. I've made modifications to it because I think this is about my third or fourth time making it this fall/winter season, but I just start by sauteing my vegetables. I kind of think of soups as the winter version of salads. It's just a really easy way for me to get a lot of vegetables, a lot of vegetable diversity, a lot of micronutrients, and some easy protein into my diet. So I started by sauteing up my base veggies. I always like to include some allium veggies like leek and onions. They are great antimicrobials. They're great prebiotics for feeding those beneficial bacteria in our gut. And then you guys know my favorite root vegetable is parsnip. So of course I added in both parsnips and carrots. And then another reason why I love soups is it's a really easy way for me to use a lot of different herbs and spices. Oh, I also added in some garlic as well. Using different herbs and spices has so many health benefits. They they are full of polyphenols, and I always say that polyphenols and fiber are really what feed our good gut bacteria. A lot of these herbs also have antibiofilm and antioxidant properties, antimicrobial properties. So again, really good for supporting both gut health and overall health. And you guys know I never really measure anything when it comes to cooking. I always just eyeball everything. And then over the weekend, I made a big batch of my homemade bone broth. So I used that as the base of the soup, and then I just added in about 2 pounds of chicken breast that I got at my local butcher store. And then I just let that simmer for about 20 minutes until the chicken breast was fully cooked through. And then lately I have been loving using my beaters to shred the chicken. I usually have to end up doing this in 2 separate batches, but this is just a really easy way to shred chicken for soup, or if you're making chicken salad or something like that. I also added in 1 full can of coconut milk, and then usually I will add fresh parsley, but I didn't have any, so I just ended up going with dried parsley. And I definitely underestimated how much soup this would make. I ended up getting about 4 big containers worth of soup, so I had it as meals throughout the week, and then I ended up storing about half of it in the freezer just so I have it as needed throughout the winter. Honestly, this is such a cozy and comforting meal, and I really say this meal is like gut fuel with the bone broth, the chicken, the veggies, and all the spices. And I just had that with some whole wheat sourdough. And then you guys know I love to have dates and peanut butter for dessert, so that was my dessert on Monday. Guys know I go into the office pretty early on Tuesdays, so I just took some of the oatmeal, some Greek yogurt, and almond butter as my breakfast. And then I did pick up a coffee. I forgot to bring my to-go mug. Usually I like to bring my own to-go mug, but I forgot. I treated myself to a coffee, and then I came home. You guys know I get home in the early afternoon on Tuesdays, so I really like to have something quick and easy for lunch. I had the ground beef that I had cooked up the day before, and I had that along with some of the squash, parsnips, and carrots that I had roasted over the weekend. I opened up this beautiful avocado and I just had that as my lunch. For dinner, I just ended up having some more of the leftover soup. I also had these chickpeas that I had made over the weekend, so I added some of those as well, and it was just a very simple, quick, and comforting dinner. Then I was in the grocery store. I saw this squash. I thought that it was a kabocha squash, but it was actually a buttercup squash. Apparently they are different. They look very similar, which is why I bought it, because kabocha is one of my favorite squash. But this was still delicious. I decided to just do a big batch of roasted squash and root vegetables. Honestly, in the fall and winter, this is one of my go-to for getting more veggies and fiber in my diet, is just making up a big tray of roasted vegetables. You can really use whatever vegetables you like. I really like to do root vegetables and squash. I season them with Ceylon cinnamon, avocado oil, and a little bit of sea salt, and I just bake them in the oven at about 400 degrees until they are soft. And then for lunch, I had a tiny bit of the ground beef left, not enough for a full serving, so I just warmed that up in a little pan. I always get questions about this pan. It is the tiniest version of the saute pan from Extrema. I will link it below. And then in my stainless steel, I just made up 2 fried eggs, and that was my lunch. The root vegetables, squash, ground beef, eggs. I did also end up adding about 1/4 of an avocado as well, but this was just a very quick and easy lunch before heading out to clinic in the afternoon. And then one of my favorite vegetables is mushrooms, especially shiitake mushrooms. These are so delicious. So for lunch on Thursday, I started by chopping up a bunch of shiitake mushrooms and sauteing those in my stainless steel pan. I do really like stainless steel pan in terms of non-toxic cookware. I just find that it performs the best. I also scrambled up a few eggs with a little bit of cottage cheese. Whenever I'm doing eggs, I do like to add in a little bit of cottage cheese or leftover meat just to bump up the protein and really get me to that 25-ish grams of protein. So I made a little scramble. I also added some salt and parsley, and I just had this with some avocado and some whole wheat sourdough bread. And then this particular week, my boyfriend was actually out of town on a work trip, but normally either on Thursday or Friday evenings, we do broccoli, salmon, and sweet potatoes. But like I said, he was out of town, but I decided to still make it for myself. This is one of my favorite meals because it is so delicious, but it's so easy to make. I just use frozen broccoli because it's really low maintenance. I roast it in the oven for a little bit just to start to dry it out, and then I will season it with garlic powder, avocado oil, and salt, and just throw it back in. I cooked up some salmon that I got from the fish market by my house, and I just warmed up some of the leftover squash. Of course, I topped it all off with some tahini, and I had some dates and peanut butter for dessert.
Every minute slipping by, even when I close my eyes, ruthless I know. You might even wonder why I go MIA sometimes.
And then on Friday, I did treat myself to another coffee. I just feel like in the winter, I need more of those little activities that just spark joy, but I did remember to bring my own mug this time. And then for lunch, I ended up actually having a work lunch. So we ordered lunch in. I got a fresh bowl with broccoli. I think it had steamed broccoli, bok choy, avocado, tofu, brown rice, and this ginger tahini dressing. It was super delicious. And then for dinner, I just ended up having the same thing that I had the night before. I warmed up some of the leftover broccoli, squash, and I made another serving of the salmon. Of course, I topped it off with some tahini. That does bring us to the end of the video. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed it. You got some meal ideas or inspiration. If you did enjoy the video, please remember to give it a thumbs up as it really does help out the channel. If you guys are new here, make sure to subscribe because we would love to have you guys here every week. And let me know what you guys want to see more of in the comments, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!
Sing this song.